Hi there, psychonauts. I have something to share with you today, and that is a 5-gram mushroom trip report. They were blue Meanie mushrooms, so I decided to dress for the occasion and dress up like the mushrooms. But let's get started, okay? So, first of all, this was my first experience with mushrooms in over a year. I'd been planning to get into a higher dose experience for a while now, so this trip was planned out a few weeks in advance, but really I had been thinking about doing this sort of dose and even beyond for quite a long time. So I didn't have anything to eat that morning and I ate the mushrooms on an empty stomach. I started eating them at 11:07 a.m. and I took 5 grams. I ate them with potato chips. That's kind of how I like to do it. I felt the effects pretty quickly, and I think it came on quickly, partly due to the dose, also due to the fact that I didn't have much in my stomach, and also just due to the fact that I think I have a pretty fast metabolism in general, and I notice that when I have a lot of these experiences that things can hit me pretty quickly. So by 11:38 a.m., and I'm gonna start going off of my trip notes. These are my trip notes, by the way. These are them. I don't know how much you can see, but let's see. At 11:38 a.m., I say, I feel like I'm on DMT, so that's interesting. And this is kind of a common theme, especially throughout the beginning of the trip. I really got those DMT vibes, and it's really interesting because I'd been making a lot of videos about DMT, and I had been experimenting with DMT more frequently, and a lot of people were telling me that they were having very similar experiences with mushrooms. And I totally understand. I mean, I understood it before, like I knew what you meant, but this time I think this is definitely the most mushrooms I've ever taken at once, especially of this potency, because these are decently potent mushrooms, this variety, the blue meanies. Anyway, so I felt like I was on DMT, like I felt like that beginning of a DMT trip. It felt like the same thing. At 11:40, I say they're coming and I surrender. The meanies are coming. Haha, no, it's just the mushrooms. I just thought that was funny. The meanies are coming. If you the references to the blue meanies in the Beatles' Yellow Submarine movie. It's one of my favorite movies, and the Yellow Submarine's actually going to come back into play. At 11:41, I note that there's going to be a lot of time. Yay. LOL, I can't write as fast as I can think, no time to explain. So at this point, and this is only not even 40 minutes in, and I'm already feeling some pretty strong stretching out of time, and also I can feel the mushrooms. I don't know how to explain it. Let's just keep going with the notes. I said the sounds, I think they are specific. It's the same as DMT. Yeah, there is some like really specific sounds going on in the tryptamine space, and I really want to explore these sounds distinctly. There's something very specific about them. They're not just sounds, like they're very specific. Like it's a very specific sound. It's almost, I don't know what it's doing, but it's doing something, this sound. And it's just reminding me of DMT. This come up of the trip was really reminding me of DMT. At 11:44, I said I could let go of time. And then I also wrote a note a little bit later. And at this point, I stopped keeping track of time. So I guess I really did let go of time. I said I'm arguing for my eye. So at this point, I was kind of already in dialogue with the mushrooms. I felt the mushroom intelligence start to merge with my own consciousness. That might sound so far out there, but this was what was happening. I was starting to become one. I was starting to interact with this mushroom intelligence. And I feel like I'm like becoming them. Like I'm becoming these mushrooms. The whole trip, I have this very active experience with them, and they end up helping me. Like they're helping me. Another note, I said they're asking about you, my audience, because I was talking to them, and it does feel like talking to aliens to some extent. It definitely feels like talking to aliens. And so I'm talking to the mushroom aliens, and I'm just trying to figure it out. But at the same time, I'm already experiencing, as noted in my trip notes, I was experiencing some time dilation already. I'm starting to experience some ego dissolution. As you can tell by, I'm arguing for my eye. This was at the point where I realized my eye, like my specific slice of awareness, I don't even know. I don't know. I was definitely losing. It was definitely some ego dissolution going on, and I remember just feeling this symbiosis and interconnection with the mushrooms and the mushroom intelligence, and I'm interacting with this thing as if it's an intelligence. That's what it presents itself as. It presents itself as an intelligence. And this is the thing, I write down next, it's obviously technology. And it's really hard to back this up. I want to explore this idea that these mushrooms are technology. I wrote something about how if the mushrooms themselves are not a super intelligence of their own, they're at the very least the technology of a super intelligence. And during the experience, it felt very obvious that the mushroom was revealing itself to me as technology. It was almost a communication technology, a sort of a way to connect with this interdimensional consciousness telepathic communication system, and that this was the technology that was allowing it to happen. Maybe that makes sense. I'd like to go more into depth and find more supporting evidence, not necessarily empirically. I could try to find some empirically, but at least in the very least, like philosophical evidence and a philosophical argument for why this feeling is so distinct. I said it's obviously technology, and in that moment, I felt that it was obvious. I remember I start asking them questions. I remember I did ask them something about, I brought up general relativity at some point to know what their opinion on was that, because I could just feel that I was in the presence of a superior intelligence, of a superior something like completely beyond myself I was in the presence of, and I could recognize that so easily. It's really hard to describe this. Okay. But at this point, things are getting pretty intense, and for some reason I get the idea to play a chess game, sort of in a way to like gain my bearings. And what happens next is something that I can't even begin to explain, but I'm just going to try to explain to you what was happening from my perspective during that trip. I still don't know what to make of it. But anyway, so I start the chess game. It's Alex from Germany. Okay. Things start to get weird. Okay. Things actually start off pretty standardly. I start setting up a pretty standard defense. I'm playing as black, by the way. And then he makes a move that was his best move. And because I analyzed the game later, he makes this move, and I remember I'm in the trip, and this is where things start to go south. I realized he's trying to trick me. I knew it was a good move. I knew he was trying to trick me. This is when I started losing hope. The crazy thing is, looking back at the game, I didn't even play that. It wasn't even that bad. I actually played fairly well looking back, and he didn't play as well as I think he did. He blundered, and I didn't even have an official blunder. I had a miss. Anyway, I did write in my notes, I already know he's going to beat me. The question is he having as much fun as I am? But I started having some sort of crisis at this point. The chess game turned into a much more higher dimensional game, and it became very high stakes from my perspective. Something that you don't know about me is my last name, and if I were to tell you it, it's very distinctly and recognizably French. This is where things get really trippy. Do you see where I'm going with this? Maybe you can put the pieces together, okay? Because my heart's beating really fast, and this started happening during the chess game too. I don't even know what's happening. It happened when he made a certain move, and I said out loud, Alex from Germany is trying to trick me. Alex the German. I said, Alex the German is trying to trick me. And at this point, this is when I started feeling something, like, in me. And I wrote, I remember I keep playing the game, but this is what I wrote, and I wrote, wow, Lamarck. And Lamarck really isn't, I spelled it wrong, and it's not really the best word that I could have written. It probably would have been more accurate if I would have wrote epigenetic memory. Again, I don't really know what to make of this, but I went through something, and I had an experience of memories that had been passed down through my DNA. And this whole thing was triggered by this chess match. It was one of the strangest things I've ever experienced, and I wouldn't believe me if I were you, but why would you? It just, I don't know. I mean, it's so much easier to say, like, yeah, you were on mushrooms, you're just tripping yourself out. I felt something very real in my DNA, and it was so strange, and I started just understanding things about myself. Okay, anyway, let's go back to the chess game. I abandon the game. I surrender to Alex from Germany. And I'm really distraught about surrendering. I'm so distraught. I'm having this like crazy thing. I don't even know what's happening. It was actually crazy that I wrote, is he having as much fun as I am? Because as soon as I said that, I stopped having fun for a while. Like, it wasn't fun anymore. I don't know how to describe it. I feel like I should move on from it though. I put on, after I resigned, I didn't resign officially, I just abandoned the game. One interesting tidbit though, it brought my rate, I didn't notice it at the time, but I noticed it later, it brought my rating down to 1111 exactly, 1111. So interesting bit of information. Means something, doesn't, whatever, but it's cool to know. I felt so defeated, it felt so high stakes. And I couldn't do it, I couldn't beat him. And I turned on, I wanted to feel better, so I decided to turn on the song Yellow Submarine because I thought the Yellow Submarine could save me. And the crazy thing is, I couldn't even finish the song. I couldn't even finish it. The Yellow Submarine couldn't save me. And it was just, I don't know, it was insane. There's like some higher dimensional order to all of reality that's really hard to understand. Like the way things play out, the way possibilities play out, the way everything plays out. Like everything is connected to everything else. And anyway, that's the end of my trip notes because the trip went off the rails. So I kind of forget what happens next. I do end up purging quite a bit during this trip, but I hadn't yet. I think this is when I go to the shower. Yeah, so I go to the shower after this, like, total crazy chess game, and I'm kind of just, like, comforting myself back. Because I'm feeling so much. I'm feeling so much, and it's not even, I feel like I'm not even feeling my own pain. Like, I'm, like, feeling someone else's. Yeah, anyway, I started feeling weird sensations in my body, and I was in the shower and I was in the bathroom for a while. I think this is when I end up throwing up for the first time. The timeline gets really confused, and I'm trying my best to piece it together chronologically, but I don't know. I threw up a lot. Well, not a lot. I threw up what was in my stomach, some mushrooms and not much else. But I could feel the mushrooms were trying to help me. I could feel the mushrooms were trying to help. I don't even think they're just trying to help me. I think they're trying to help us. I think they're our best bet. I know that might sound crazy, but I don't know what else can save us. Except maybe if more people can have these types of experiences. And I know that these types of experiences aren't for everybody. But still, if I think there's so many risks in every aspect of life and everything. I think this is one of the best chances we got. I think psychedelics are one of the most promising things that we have to actually get our shit together as human beings. Yeah. Anyway, so I did a lot of purging. I felt like there was so much junk, or honestly, like, I felt that there was literally, like, poison in my body, that there was things poisoning my body from, like, food that I was eating and just everything. And the mushrooms were telling me that they were trying to help me. They were going to get it out of me. They were going to get all this bad stuff out, and I could tell they were helping me. And I'm purging, and actually at some point I end up eating like a couple more mushrooms, so I might have got another gram or so in, maybe 2, because I was so convinced that the mushrooms were helping me get all this junk out of me, that they were getting stuff. And I don't even think it's like, you know, like, the whole purging phenomenon with psychedelics is not something that I'm as familiar with. Like, I've thrown up on psychedelics a lot of times, but this was the most intense and the most spiritual purging experience that I've ever had. I've never felt like this. I've never felt it to this extent that I was, and it wasn't even just like physical it's almost like it's like another level too, like it's a spiritual component or just like a higher dimensional component to it. It's like the whole thing, like this 3-dimensional physical reality is just like a shadow of this higher reality. It's just like a projection of this higher reality, and that there's something going on up there that's causing this to play out the way it is. But it's really something, it's really just like a sign of something happening on like a higher dimensional level. I don't know how much of this makes sense. But I was throwing up a lot. I was spending a lot of time just in the shower. I felt like I was in there for a long time, but I never ran out of hot water or anything. And I know it only takes like 30 or 40 minutes to run out. I kept turning it off and on. I felt bad about the water at some point too, but I just kind of had to accept it because I had to get through this, and the water was probably the least of my worries right now. We can afford the water bill. It's just, oh my God. I don't know. Let's move forward because I have a time marker. So this happened the same day. I don't know if any of you follow any of this, but so the day that this happened was the day of the Canadian Grand Prix, and that is what my husband was doing. he was with me. I'm tripping. He's kind of like halfway a trip sitter or whatever. Anyway, so my husband is watching the Canadian Grand Prix, and it starts at 1 p.m. our time. And I remember he was with me. He was with me right before the race started. Okay, he was with me. I was in my room again. I was in the bed again, and I honestly can't even remember. I can't remember the chronological order of these things. But I do remember he was with me right before the race started, and then he left to go see the beginning of the race. He came back in just a few minutes later. I later asked him about it, like, and he said maybe like 4 laps or something, 4 laps in. Anyway, but he comes back not that long later, and I ask, is the race still going? And he says, it just started. So I was experiencing some pretty severe time dilation. I had no concept of time. None. It's really hard to piece all of this together. Yeah, but more things were happening. I think, oh my God. I just remember like a lot of movement too. Like the mushrooms were making me move in like certain ways. Like I was just doing these weird dances. And it always reminds me of this thing that Terrence McKenna says about like high-dose trip reports. Like, thank God nobody is here to see this. There was a time when I was just in the bathroom, in the shower, just doing this weird like dance, and I feel like I don't even know. I feel like I'm like just moving this energy through my body in like this way, like the mushroom is like guiding me how to do it. And it's just like all instinct. And I'm just like moving and being absolutely out of my mind. I'm just doing what I feel like I need to do. I'm just doing it. And there was a lot of back and forth between going in bed and going to the bathroom. At one point, I'm like on the ground, like purging again, and I'm like peeing myself, and like it's not pretty. Like this is not a glamorous thing. So and I think it's not something most people would consider a fun experience. Anyway, I know I may have benefited from integrating this trip a little bit more before doing a trip report, so who knows if this will actually be the final trip report, but there's also something about getting the trip out while you still have a really strong impression of it. And that's really what I wanted to do, because this experience left such a strong impression on me. I don't know. The weird thing is, like, I'm trying to remember visuals. I always have a really hard time, unless I'm like specifically remembering to kind of like jot it down in my memory. I never notice the visuals, or I never like remember them. Like, they'll happen. I don't, like, in the beginning, I remember I was feeling like DMT, and if I closed my eyes, I could already kind of see that type of space, at least a little bit. But like looking back, I can't remember any visuals. I can't even remember visuals. I just remember like these strong impressions, like just what's happening up here, what's happening internally, like what's happening to my consciousness. Like, I'm sure there was visual stuff going on. I know at the beginning, you know, I did the hand test. And it's like, oh yeah, my hand's doing the thing. But I don't know. I think I don't even pay attention to the visuals, because it's all just up here. I noticed that with a lot of my trip reports, that they're not very visually oriented. So I hope you guys still, I hope that makes sense to you. And I think that there might be other people who kind of, I don't know. I don't know. But this was a pretty crazy trip, and I still don't really know what to say. So let me know if any of that made sense, and if there's any of it that you can relate to. I would love to know if you guys have explored any similar threads in your mushroom experiences. I feel like I have a revival of interest for mushrooms and exploring, especially exploring this idea as mushrooms as technology. There's definitely just something going on beyond what we really understand. And I know that. Anyway, I don't know, just let me know what you think of that trip, and if you've had anything similar. What are your experiences with high dose mushroom trips? Because I might be exploring more high doses soon. We'll see. But that is all for this video, and you all will see me in the next one.